Hey guys, it's Jodie with you again, showing you another furniture painting tutorial. And in today's tutorial, I want to show you how to get this very pretty but still very contemporary look. So stay tuned for that. Okay, to get started with today, I am making a couple of custom colours, and what I am using here is Daisy, which is a bright yellow, and I am also pouring some Honky Tonk Red, which is also a very bright red, almost with a blue tinge to it. So what I have here is a piece of palette paper, or whatever you call it, I'm not entirely sure, and it's just what you use if you haven't got a plastic or wooden palette to hand. Okay, I now have Florida Orange, and I'm basically just pouring all of these right next to each other, getting them ready to mix in a short while. And now I am grabbing some Fluff, which is a middle white from the Dixie Belle range, just to lighten this up. So basically I have run out of Flamingo, which is Dixie Belle's blush coral colour. And I am basically just trying to make myself a coral colour, or at least a colour similar to coral, whatever this kind of creates, I guess. And with a wooden spatula, I'm just going to mix all these four colours up now, and I am just going to see what happens. So all of the paints and products that I use today, they will all be listed below, and you can buy them from the links below as well. Also, it's there just as a reference, just in case you get a little bit lost or you want to reference back to what colours I have used today. This part of the video was also, it was also filmed live, but I've just edited it down to make it easier for you guys to watch. So I encourage you to just have a play with mixing colours, because it can be really fun, and it's a really great way just to create a unique colour sometimes that is your own. And if you struggle to, I don't know, say if there's a certain colour that you want that you can't buy from a pot that you do have to mix, then, you know, you could always just have a quick little search just to figure out what colours might help. Okay, so what I am adding now is a little bit of Peony. I've kind of made a beigey salmon colour here. It's still not quite coral, so I'm just adding a little pink into this now, just to give it a little bit of a blush colour. This turned out, it's not going to be the perfect coral, but it actually turned out to be exactly what I wanted, so it worked out for me in the end. So the next colour I'm going to mix is going to be almost like a deep purple burgundy colour. I'm starting with Muscadine Wine and also Amethyst. So Muscadine Wine is a very almost burgundy colour in itself. I'm not even sure how to, it's a Bordeaux colour. And then you've got Amethyst, which is a very vibrant purple. And now I am mixing some Plum Crazy. So I'm just kind of getting a little bit of experimental here. I've got a little bit of an idea of what two colours I want to mix in my head, and I'm just kind of going with what feels right. So I'm adding a lot of Muscadine Wine, a little bit of Amethyst, and a teensy bit of the Plum Crazy. And as you can see, I start to get this really deep, almost burgundy, or maybe even a deep fuchsia kind of colour. Anyway, it's definitely the warm colour that I wanted. So I have my Scarlet Brush, and I have dipped my Scarlet Brush into both of these colours, and I'm putting the darker colour on the edge and the lighter colour inside, and I'm just having a play here. I am really into layering colours at the moment. I don't know about you guys, but I go through phases where I love doing a certain style. Like one moment it might be blending, and right now, I guess because it's summer and bohemian is really the vibe of the summer, so I'm really enjoying layering colours right now. I'm going to put this base on. So yeah, I just want to mention this is a base as well, so it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. I'm going to put this base on everywhere, and I'm just having a play. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just as a rule of thumb, I like to have my darker colour on the outer edges and then the lighter colour inside, because that's just typically what works well. I am also using a water mister just to help me move this paint around. So the water mister, when I'm misting the water, it's not going to be absolutely saturated. It's just going to be a tiny little bit of water just to help the chalk paint move. Also, if you feel like the paint is drying or you want to reactivate the paint, then you can reactivate Dixie Belle chalk paint for a short while with water. I'm a little bit naughty sometimes as well, if I'm being totally honest. It is a good idea to protect the glass before you start painting. However, I can be this is like lazy me. This is probably my biggest lazy fault, is that whenever I'm painting mirrors or glass, I am terrible at not covering them up. I actually find it easier to go in there and clean the glass afterwards than to mess around with masking tape and things beforehand. I don't know, it's just a little quirk of mine. But if you do get the chalk paint onto glass, then it does clean straight off. Just use a damp rag or a baby wipe or something like that and try to get it off as quick as you can. Okay, now that's all dry, I'm coming in with a little bit more Muscadine Wine, but it is just Muscadine Wine on its own, and I'm just using a cheap chip brush for this, and I'm just layering this around the edges. Again, using a little bit of water to get that moving. However, this is going to be a very layered look, so I'm not overly concerned with blocks of colour and blending at the moment. So what I'm doing here as well is very similar to what I did before, but instead I'm using Lucky Lavender and Rebel Yellow, and I have double dipped my Scarlet Brush, which is a fantastic synthetic brush, and I'm just having a play right now, and I'm just applying this sort of in random areas. In some areas I'm adding a little bit more yellow, in some areas I'm adding more of a Lucky Lavender blend, and I'm just seeing what happens here, and yeah, just having a play really. When layering colours, try not to get too much in your head about it. I know a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, I don't know what colours to even put together. I think the beauty of layering colours and then sanding them back or wet distressing, distressing them back in some way at the end, is that you can generally put a lot of different crazy colours together, and then just by simply sanding them back or wet distressing, you can make them work. So just don't get too, if you decide you want to go layer colours, then just have a play and just use whatever colours you like and see what happens. Also, sometimes what I do is I will go on Pinterest and I will look at things like rustic doors or old Mediterranean architecture or Italian walls and things like that, and I'll just look at what colours have been layered on top of each other and what colours are peeling back, and that can sometimes help me decide what colours I want to use on a project. So I'm not totally covering the the blend that I've got underneath. I'm letting that poke through a little bit because I want this to look very rustic, because that's what I'm kind of all about at the moment. What I am also going to do is I'm just kind of going to let this drip a little bit in these panels, and again, this is just going to create that very textured and watery look that I want. Okay, so I am now going back to my Muscadine Wine, which is kind of going to be I always tend to have one colour when I do layer a piece. I always tend to have what I call, I don't call it anything, but it's the colour that brings the whole piece together. It's kind of the primary colour, and it's generally a warmer tone. So the Muscadine Wine for me on this one is going to be my primary colour, and it's going to be the colour that helps me bring it all together, and it's kind of going to be the main repeating theme through it, if that makes sense. I hope it does. If not, please tell me and I will try and explain it better in another video. So I'm just applying this sort of randomly, but mostly again focusing around those edges. Okay, what I have now is a small flat brush, and I'm using Florida Orange, and I am really watering this down as I use it so that it's almost a wash. I almost want the Florida Orange to be translucent, and again I am just building colours here, and I am just applying that in random areas just to create a very, very soft look. So again, it's what I'm in the mood for right now, is layering colours and making it look like something's had lots of colours over it over the years, and those colours have started to peel back. And the Florida Orange is the perfect colour to complement this, because it will complement both the Muscadine Wine and the Rebel Yellow that I have used. Also ignore those windows. I know some of you are kind of a bit more of a clean freak than I am, then that might drive you crazy. I totally get it, but just, yeah, I promise they will be clean when this is ready to go. Alright, so I'm bringing another colour into this mix, and this is Haint Blue. Haint Blue is a very, very pale blue colour. It's almost like a grey white tinge to it. And just like before, I'm using a chip brush. I'm dry brushing this. I'm not even using much water, and I'm dry brushing the Haint Blue in some random areas. And then also going back to my Muscadine Wine, and every time I feel like the Haint Blue might be just overpowering this a little bit and making it look a little washed out, then I'm going to come in with my Muscadine Wine and just kind of just blend it out a little bit, but very roughly blend. Like I'm after those brush strokes for this. I really want those brush strokes to shine through, because that for me is what helps get a rustic look. I'm also coming in with a little bit more Rebel Yellow, and again just building those colours back up. So whenever I feel like a certain colour is taking over, the Muscadine Wine included as well, I'm just coming in with the other colours and just adding them in random places again. Also, what I might do if I feel like a colour is taking over is I might just get my water mister and just spray it out and let it drip, and that will also water it down and create that layered effect. So this look, it really is just all about playing and experimenting, adding colours, hiding colours a little bit, adding another colour, and then softening that a little bit, and then just trying to figure out what works. And that is the best way to layer colours. So I don't know, just grab 4 or 5 of your favourite colours, and or maybe even, no, I would say 4 or 5 actually, maybe 3 if it's a smaller piece, and then just have a play. Alright, so what I have here now is Gold Digger, and this is from the Moonshine Metallics range, and it's also a chalk mineral paint, but it's a very, very shimmery metallic paint. Using the Scarlet Brush, I'm showing you this in slow motion so that you can actually get a really good visual of what I'm doing here. So using the Scarlet Brush, I'm again applying this in random areas. It's going to be thicker in some areas and thinner in others, but what I really want is for that to be in all of those details, because I want that gold to settle in the details, because that's where I imagine at some point they might have been gilded and, you know, and the gold has worn away. I am then using my water mister and I'm just spritzing that out. And this is going to create the perfect golden patina and shimmer. So when working with Gold Digger in this way, it is better to start from the top and then work to the bottom. Because what you don't want is, you don't want to start from the bottom and then start misting, and then when you get to the top you start misting, and then all the water drips down to the bottom and ruins what you did earlier. So start from the top and work your way downwards, and hopefully you can see here just how rustic that Gold Digger's looking, but it just adds a perfect touch to this. Alright, and now here is Gemstone Mousse. We're kind of adding a lot of different paints and metallics and things to this, and this is in the colour Garnet, which is a very beautiful red metallic, and I have an artist brush. This is a fan brush that I'm using here. So I only want to add a touch of this. I just want, again, it to look like maybe it's had lots of, I don't know, very expensive metallics or golds and things on this at some point. So I'm very, very lightly dry brushing this over the details and using my finger just to blur it out if I'm thinking it's looking too heavy. This is going to help, again, just add more more character to the aged look, and it's also going to give this more depth. So I am not applying it everywhere, I am applying it to the hardware and mostly to anywhere that's got some carvings and lots of detail. So this piece is all dry now, and I am coming in with a baby wipe, or you can use a damp rag, it doesn't have to be a wet wipe, and I am doing something called wet distressing. So normally I would sand this back, however I don't want the grittiness of the sandpaper, I want this to look quite soft because I'm already really enjoying the way this is looking. So what I'm mostly doing here is taking off some of the Gold Digger and some of the top layers. What I love about wet distressing is that you have total control over how far down you go. So with sandpaper, you obviously sand, and it just, you know, when you're sanding, you sand, and it takes off all those layers. But with with a wet wipe or a damp rag, you know, depending on what pressure you put on, you have total control how far you go down. And what this is going to do is it's going to just soften up the gold digger a little bit, but it's also going to allow some of those colours to shine through. Alright, so now it's transfer time. I'm cutting out one of the sheets from one of the flowers from the sheets from the Cacti and Succulents range, and I'm sticking it on the panel. I am then using the wooden stick that comes in the transfer box, and I am rubbing all of this in sections just to make sure that all of the transfer has been applied to the furniture. So gradually lift the plastic sheet as you're going along, and you will see that the transfer is sticking down. If any still lifts a little bit, then go back in with your tool and just start to rub it a little bit further. Also make sure that you use your hands afterwards to burnish it to take out any oxygen. I'm also going in here with a sanding pad, not oxygen, sorry, I meant air bubbles. I'm also coming in with some sanding pad and sanding it back because I want this to look really aged. I want the flowers to look like the rest of the piece and not like they've just been stuck on there. I want them to look like they have started to wear away. So I'm coming in and I'm chopping out my second flower, and I love it when you can chop up transfers because it means you can create your own special unique design with them. And how pretty are these flowers? They're so pretty. So I'm just going back in and doing the same thing again, and I think the colours in this really complement this piece well. Sometimes I will design a piece of furniture around a transfer, but in this case I was looking for something to fill those panels, and this transfer just really stood out to me because the flowers are pretty, it's got character, and it was just the perfect addition to this piece. Have you guys ever tried any transfers, or if you tried any from the Dixie Belle range, just let me know in the comments. I would love to hear. I really love transfers because I just feel like they can add so much extra character and dimension to furniture, especially if you get to create your own kind of look from them, either by chopping them out or manipulating them by sanding and waxing or painting over them. They're so versatile, there's so many different things you can do. So yeah, so I just thought these transfers were just the perfect addition. Okay, now I'm moving on to the interior. I feel like I'm moving very fast today. So here I have some Lucky Lavender and some Fluff. And I'm just going to give this a bit of a mix. What I'm looking for here is a very soft, almost pale lavender colour for the interior. I want the interior to complement obviously the outside of the piece, but I don't want it to take over. I want them both to work in synergy while the outside of the piece still being sort of the main event. Alright, so what I'm using for this is my Scarlet Brush, and the reason why I'm using my Scarlet is because it's a very thin but still quite a firm brush, and it's going to allow me to get into all of those corners. And also because Dixie Belle is self-leveling and because it's a synthetic brush, it's going to help me create a smoother and brushstroke free finish. So this colour actually looks very pale here. It looked really pale as I was putting it on, but it actually darkened as it dried and a lot more of the lavender colour came through. I was happy with that. I actually preferred it in the end. It's what Bob Ross calls a happy little accident. So sometimes that happens, but if it hadn't, then I could have just come in with another coat and made sure that I had lightened it down. I did use the same colour for 2 layers on here. I needed 2 layers for good coverage, just because it was quite a light colour and the wood is quite dark. Thankfully, there was no bleed through, but if there was bleed through, then I would have used Dixie Belle's Boss, and that would have prevented any tannins from making their way through. I left this overnight to dry, and I got one of the sanding sponges from Dixie Belle, which are very, very, very fine grit. And what they do is they take off the chalky layer and just smooth the whole thing out so that it feels very, very buttery smooth without actually causing any distress to the paint. So they are very perfect for creating smooth finishes, and they're absolutely one of my favourite sandpapers to use. Once I finished sanding and I cleaned up the dust, I came in with some Gator Hide. And Gator Hide is the toughest, most durable top coat that Dixie Belle have. And I have the Dixie Belle Gator Hide sponge to help me with application to avoid any streaks. So because this is a high traffic area, I want to make sure that there is no risk of any scratches. So the Gator Hide will be perfect for this because it will completely protect the paint. Okay, and last but not least, I used Dixie Belle's Howdy-Do Hemp Oil and also one of the applicator pads to seal this piece. I applied it very thinly and then I left it 2 hours and I wiped off the excess. This just makes sure that there's enough time to get the to allow the hemp oil to soak into the paint and protect it. I have to say I was so impressed. It was recommended to me by a friend. I'd never really used it so much before, and it was like I just dialed up the contrast on the colour, and it also sealed perfectly well. Generally felt that it was something that was usually used to nourish wood, but it would just worked so good that I think it might be a new favourite, and I'm going to definitely use it more from now on. Let me know in the comments if you have ever used hemp oil to protect chalk mineral paint before, because as I say, this is a new thing for me and I absolutely loved it. Alright, and here's a finished look with some close-ups too. So I really hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. Don't forget to give it some love and to subscribe to my channel if you did. And let me know in the comments below if you like this kind of look or are going to try something similar yourself. And as always guys, have a lovely day and happy painting. Bye bye.